All right, back here on SportsLine, talking about the news today that Governor Bill Lee wants the state legislature to approve the use of $500 million in state bonds to help with the construction of a new stadium. The ifs on that, the big ifs, are it's got to be a new stadium. It's not renovation. It has to be an enclosed stadium, so weather's no longer an issue. It's got to be multi-purpose to do things beyond just host Titans games that we talked about a lot in the first segment. And ultimately, the team and the city have to agree on a plan for development for the east side of the river around the stadium. But this is huge news in the discussion of having a new stadium and what that would look like for the Titans and what it would look like for the community. And we want to know from you guys tonight. 737-7767. What do you think about this news? What do you think about what you've heard from the plan so far? The Titans shifting gears from renovation to new stadium. Now this comes from the governor's office. Obviously, Metro's involved as well. Mayor Cooper involved on that part of it. What do you think about this? Good thing, bad thing? What do you want to see? What do you not want to see out of this deal? We want to hear from you. 737-7767, the number. And let's begin tonight with Kenny. Kenny, thanks for holding on. You're first up here on SportsLine.
Yes, I want to know, my name is Kenny Conrad, and I work here, and I work in Nashville. I just want to know because I know the Titans ain't won a Super Bowl, and I just want to know, because I want to know his tax bills, and you talking about sports. How about wrestling? Cause WWE come everything at the Bridgestone, and I just want to know is Tennessee State gonna be involved, and Tennessee State gonna be involved, and Vanderbilt gonna be involved.
Yeah. All right, Kenny, I'll try to tackle those for you, and we appreciate the call. Number one, you mentioned wrestling, and that was something I said in the first segment. WrestleMania, which is one of the biggest events you can have as a city. I mean, it brings all sorts of people in. It's multiple nights. It's in huge venues. That absolutely, I think, would be on the table for Nashville with the new stadium. John Burton could speak on that way better than I can because he's the guy who absolutely loves wrestling. But he could tell you more of what that would mean. But I know for a fact he believes that with this stadium, with this stadium, you would have the opportunity to host that. You would have the opportunity to bring those types of events in, wrestling and many other things that would be different than what we can get right now. Tennessee State, I would think, would be involved in the discussions here because obviously TSU has played in Nissan Stadium as its home venue at times. John Merritt Classic for sure has been over there, oftentimes homecoming as well. I imagine that would remain the same, and clearly TSU and the Titans have a great relationship, only more so now that Eddie George is the head coach over there. Vanderbilt less so. It's a private university. It's never had a connection really with the stadium. Now, could they play a game over there? Could Tennessee play a game over there? Sure. Could there be a Kickoff Classic game every year, kind of like there is in Dallas or kind of like there is in Atlanta? Seems to make a ton of sense. That's not even a Final Four type of, it'd be a totally new event that could happen every year in a stadium like the one we're talking about. That could involve Tennessee or Vanderbilt or another SEC team. So I think all of that is on the table, and all of it will be part of a discussion. But that's the thing. You get this discussion going, you get a stadium like this going, really, the endpoints are limitless. What you can do in that building, there's literally no cap. And that was one of the points I tried to make, and I hope I made it in the opening monologue, is right now we're capped. Whether you want to believe it or not, Nashville as a city only can do so much right now because we just don't have the facilities on the large scale to do the biggest events in the world. You know, the Music City Center is amazing, but there's some conventions that can't come here because even that's not big enough. You need a stadium like what we're talking about. The Super Bowl, obviously not coming here right now. WrestleMania is not coming here right now. National Championship game, Final Four. Those things aren't coming here. You build that stadium, the list of things that aren't coming here is zero. There is nothing that is not coming here if that stadium gets built. And that's what we're talking about. That is why this is such an important discussion. And maybe you don't think that that is an important step for the city. You think there's other important issues. That's fine. I totally respect that if that's the viewpoint. But just realize you don't get those things if you don't take this step. You can only do what you've done up to this point without the next step. So any hope for growth comes with that. Back to the phones we go. Say hello to Mike. Mike, good evening. Welcome to SportsLine.
Thank you. I got a couple things I'd like to say, and then I'd like to ask you a question if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm an old country boy. Grew up out at Antioch High School, and we had a football field. We had some stands. We had a scoreboard, and we were in business. Basically, that's what we're talking about when we talk about a football stadium. Now, we got skyboxes. We got all kind of upper decks. We got closing the ends of the Titan Stadium, making it a Coliseum. We got on and on things we could do to improve what we already have. But what's interesting about this is that regardless of what you do with a stadium, you're still going to have a football field, you're going to have the stands, and you're going to have a scoreboard. Now, we can talk about all of these other things that we want to do in a stadium. TSU, we're talking about a Kickoff Classic. We're talking about country music shows and every kind of entertainment you can possibly imagine inside that stadium. But who's going to pay for all of this? It's going to be the taxpayers of the city of Nashville. And what's interesting about it is that one person starts screaming, we got to have the best stadium in the world to attract all of the high dollar items, but list all the high dollar items other than the football game, and the money is not going towards sports. It is going in the pockets of millionaires and billionaires and every other kind of related activity that is not sports. So now I'd like to ask the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I've been to the football stadium, the Titan football stadium in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a wonderful facility. It's by far the best stadium in the state of Tennessee. Now, the Vols have got a big old bowl up there. It's not a professional football type stadium. It's a college stadium. And here, all of a sudden, we're going to spend all the money that we can put $1 billion. So all of these other people can come in there and make money in that facility. Where are we going with that mentality? Who are we trying to please? The big money people. Do you think this is a wise thing to do? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I appreciate the call. Well, one thing I can promise you is they're not going to play at Antioch High School anytime soon. Yes, it's a football stadium with some stands and a scoreboard, but we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar business in the NFL here. And there's no question that the Titans' presence in Nashville has done nothing but good things for the city of Nashville, and yes, all its community members as well. Bringing that team here was one of the most fundamentally important things in the growth, the view of this city, the morale of this city that has ever happened. That is an undeniable fact. And so that's where part of the investment comes. It's already come. And this is part of that partnership of keeping it happy. Now, I will say this. $500 million in bonds is a fair amount. I'm not going to deny that. And if you think it's too much, I think that's fine. I don't think that you're out of line if you think that's the case. I will be disappointed if we hear that there's a whole lot more coming from public money than that. If that's it, and a $2 billion plus stadium, the rest of it, which would be more than 75%, is fronted essentially by the Titans, that's a pretty decent deal. It would stack up there with a lot of the deals around the country. I was looking earlier today at some of them. Jerry's World down in Dallas. Jerry Jones, with all his money, he got 37% of that stadium built with public funds. There have been others that have been in the 30s, in the 40s, even up to the 50s. The Bills just announced today final plans with upstate New York and Erie County and Buffalo. They're going to get 65% of it funded from public funds. That, I think, is ridiculous and should not happen here. And that's the leverage that this city has that, frankly, Buffalo doesn't. As much tradition as the Bills have up there, and as much as those people love them, they were stuck between a rock and a hard place because that stadium stinks and the Bills want a new one. And they're one of 32 franchises in the NFL, and other cities would line up to take them in a heartbeat if they said they wanted to leave. And Buffalo knew that. And so they had to come to the table with just about everything they had. And they're going to pay a huge sum of money to give the Bills the stadium that they desire, to make it state-of-the-art and to keep them there in upstate New York. I don't think that's an issue here. I don't think the Titans are running out the door anytime soon. I think everybody sees what's on the table with these other events. So this city doesn't have to beg. It doesn't have to go to 50% or higher than that. If you think there should be some negotiation of what this number is right now, I think that's fair. I think that's worthy of the discussion. But it's also not out of line to think that the public would put in a little money for something that has so many uses for the public. And yes, you're right, there are some big corporations, there are some big leagues, there are some big entertainment companies which will make a ton of money off of those events that we're talking about. But it also is why we keep opening hotels on every other corner in this town. And you know what those hotels bring? They bring jobs. You know what they bring? They bring new concepts and new restaurants and new facilities that bring other jobs, and they bring other talented people to Nashville. And when those people come, they create more jobs. Ultimately, this is one of the best places in the country that has survived the pandemic, that survived a recession back a decade ago, better than just about any other place. And part of that is because of the growth. And again, the growth comes back to the investment in sports 25 years ago and everything that's happened since then. These things cost a lot of money. But over time, when you bring in those other events, when you bring in a Super Bowl, when you bring in a Final Four, you make that money back. You do bring that into the community in different ways. I think there needs to be good oversight. I've said that. I think there needs to be good planning. But you do bring yourself opportunities to bring in some of these things and increase the growth in your community when you do it. We'll take another break. We'll come back. More of your phone calls right after this.